I was at a YPO event and I was chatting to one of the biggest private equity funds in the world. We were in like their conference room, this very closed meeting. And one of the things he said that really resonated with me is like, when we grow companies, we say to the owner, you got two choices, you know, red pill, blue pill kind of thing. You can either be rich or you can be king. What do you want to be? Because you can't be both. You can be king or you can be rich, but you cannot be both.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ben and Bergs podcast. I'm Ben, your favorite high school dropout, and with me is Bergs, your favorite MBA and COO of Collective Shift, Australia's leading crypto portfolio insights company, providing professional analysis and portfolio strategies for crypto investors like you. We're the unique blend of the established and the self-made, and we're here to break down crypto, business, and personal growth. We're not just talking shit though, we're talking the real insights to make you a better investor, build successful businesses, and level up your life. And today we've got a good mate of mine and fellow founder, much more successful than me, Harry Sanders, founder of Studio Hawk, Australia's biggest SEO agency. Harry's been featured on the Forbes 30 Under 30 multi-million-dollar business. He's also an ambassador for the Lighthouse Foundation, which is a youth homelessness charity, and has got a very, very amazing story about coming from homeless upbringing to now multi-millionaire tech founder, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Ben. Good to be on.
Thank you, man. We're talking very briefly before the pod that Harry doesn't support me, so he hasn't listened to the podcast. So, but he was very honest in saying that, so I appreciate that, mate.
Thanks, mate. Good under the bus there.
Man, you've got an amazing story in all seriousness, and look up to you as a fellow founder. You know, we're sort of similar age, and you're absolutely crushing it. You're 7-8 years in to Studio Hawk now?
Yeah. I think 7 or 8.
That's insane, man. You've got 80 employees.
Yep.
The largest SEO agency in the country.
Yep.
And you started out with literally nothing.
Literally nothing.
Talk us through, man. What, take us back.
Yeah, I mean, so I started, a lot of people think that the story starts at like 17 homeless. I actually kind of story starts at 14. My parents were divorced at a young age. We weren't really well off. We had one of those dinosaur computers, the ones, big monitors.
Yeah.
And I used
to dial up.
Mate, 100%. Yeah. And I used to play a lot of RuneScape because all my friends were playing GameCube and stuff, but I didn't have any of those. I had RuneScape, which is best game ever. Through playing that, I learnt about this thing called SEO, right? I wanted to build a travel website because I really wanted to travel. I'd never traveled before. And I learned you could either pay for traffic or earn traffic through SEO. So I went down this rabbit hole of SEO. And I think it was the first time in my life, maybe you remember, the first time you did something at a young age that you were genuinely passionate about. And that was that moment for me. I started learning everything about it. I used to test things. And I actually got a job in the industry a few months later as an SEO specialist at a company, just kind of like an intern kind of position. And that's where I learned and stayed for, 2-3 years till I was 17. So I had those skills, but then obviously the rest of the story is all kind of where it went downhill for me. I left that company, tried to start my own business and ended up homeless.
That's insane. I think the very much resonate with like going down the rabbit hole. Like that was a Bitcoin for me. And you and I are wired very, very similar. Like, once we find something that we love, we just really go deep.
Infatuated.
Yeah, exactly. And talk us through like, you're literally homeless. I read a story about when you first got your client, like one of your first clients literally paid your way to move into a share house.
Yeah. Well, so very early on, obviously, going from homelessness, I didn't have any idea of, that I would end up homeless. It was kind of, a very surreal, confronting thing. And for people listening in, it's, emergency housing takes about 6 months. It's a substantial period of time where you just won't get any support. You might get a social worker. I was very lucky to have a social worker, which helped me through a lot of the mental health challenges I had. But then I met a guy called Graham Robertson, who was the CEO of Tetley Tea and a few other major fast-moving consumer good brands. And he taught me everything I know about business. He really picked me up and helped me out. And that was the segue into getting that first client. He said, because I was telling him, how I wanted to get a job at McDonald's or, something like that. My dream back then was to get another agency job.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you've got this business. Why don't you do something with it? I thought, well, dude, who's going to hire me? I'm some like homeless 17-year-old kid. But he introduced me to these different events and I kept meeting people, going through the ringer until I finally got think a couple clients, and that paid for that share house. And we're talking, most barren of share houses. I think I was with 4 other guys, room there, and they were so lovely. They're like, do you need a hand moving in or anything? And I don't have anything to move in, but I was so ashamed and embarrassed that I said, nah, it's all good. Like, I'm buying some stuff. But yeah, I remember it was like 125 a week. The date was September 12th. And I remember getting in that room and just bawling my eyes out, man. It was a very, very crazy day.
That's intense, man. How did you get your first client? Like, what was that? Who was it? Or how was that process?
The process, it was a healthcare client.
Yeah.
They had some medical centers.
Yeah.
The process was just literally going to free events. I mean, if you were at some free networking events 7-8 years ago in Melbourne, chances are we've probably met. I was at any event that was doing breakfast, food, whatever, and free networking. Now, I was the scrappiest looking dude in that room, if I'm being honest. But because I was in tech, it kind of didn't matter too much. I mean, lucky I wasn't in finance or anything, right? But yeah, I was able to catch up with people. Mate, I had these business cards that I bought on Vistaprint, which is, that's a sin in itself. But these things were like, I bought the cheapest cards on Vistaprint, and I don't know, I think it cost me $10 for a pack of like 200 or something. These are like 1-ply toilet paper things. Like, I'm handing these,
Won't be bummed with it.
mate, 100%. Like, you wouldn't wipe your bum, right? And so I'm handing these things out to people at these networking events because I didn't have any money, right? Hoping that they would call. And eventually a couple people gave me a chance. Like, I charged them bugger all, and I moved mountains for these guys, dude. Like, we work with you guys like Vodafone and New Balance today. Like, I was doing the same work that we would do for Vodafone for this guy paying me like, $250 a month back then, And but I did it because I had a passion for SEO, and I had this idea that, if I got enough clients, I could get a share house, which is what happened. That was a catalyst of everything.
That's amazing, man. And I don't think we've covered it, but mate, how old are you now?
25.
Look at that. So you're 17 to 25 and you've achieved so much already. It's already an amazing story. And mate, so take us on the journey a little bit more. So you've been homeless, you've kind of, you had a job, your goal was to get another job, but you met this guy and you started another business and you were networking your ass off. And now you've grown the business significantly. So you've kind of gone that 0 to 1 and you're in a share house and you've created this business, you've got a few clients. How did you go about kind of scaling that up, and talk us through that process?
Yeah, from there, the snowball was rolling down the mountain, right? So I knew that if I could keep doing good work, I would get referrals from these clients, and then they would refer us new work. And that kind of is exactly what happened. I started getting a lot of referrals from these clients I was working with, enough so that about a year and a half later, I was out of that share house, and I was in a place of my own in Paran. And that's about when I met one of the first guys I hired, who was didn't have any money to pay rent. And so I kind of saw that, obviously, given my circumstances, I saw that as an opportunity to help this guy out. And that was the first hire. And then from there, that snowball was well and truly rolling now. By then, I was just getting more and more traction. So I was training him, and then I hired 2 other people who have since become my general manager of Australia and my general manager of London, so Anthony and Lawrence. And that really kicked things off. And I think as soon as you hire people, things start to feel a lot more real. Because when it was just me, I think, put some numbers to it, I think I was probably making, 70 grand a year. And this is, with no tax or anything on it, and none of the business expenses factored into that. But that was enough for me to have my own place. And in the span of a year, 2 years, I'd gone from homeless to having a place of my own, which I was pretty stoked about. But yeah, just that kind of ball started rolling. And the big moment for us was about 6 months after. I get a call from Officeworks, who were looking to go to market with a new SEO provider. And so, of course, I came in, did the pitch with Officeworks. and realized, if anyone's seen Mad Men, that's a lot of how this advertising world still works. There's all these beautiful people walking into these meetings with the people doing the deal. But we ended up in the final stages. And I remember Officeworks asked us, they're probably a multi-billion-dollar company in Australia, like a Staples. And they asked us, what other big brands have you worked with? And I think there's a moment every founder, every entrepreneur goes through when you kind of get that ego check where it's like, okay, like we want to work with you, but we want to know you guys are big. And I start fumbling because we don't have any big clients. So I'm like, oh, have you heard of, Paran Medical Center? And they're like, oh, yeah. And they're like, oh, have you heard of Jim's Electronics? And they're like, no. And you're just naming these names of like, probably $1 million companies that are like, no, not household brands, And, but I must have said something because they gave us a shot. And within 6 months of us winning that campaign, we had grown them about 30%. It was just, I wish every campaign was as like that, but it was just one of those holy grails. And off the back of that, we had New Balance reach out to us, and we were basically the kids on the block. Everyone wanted a conversation with us because they knew we'd grown an already massive brand, even bigger, off the back of what was previously a 2-year lull in their growth. So that was the catalyst. It just exploded after that.
That's insane. What do you put it down to? Do you put it down to like your understanding of SEO, like new strategies, like what do you put it down to?
I think it started my understanding of SEO. It certainly isn't today. I would be, if we had a tier list of SEO knowledge in the agency, I'd probably be C tier. Some would argue D tier in the agency, which is funny because, everyone still wants to ask me the SEO questions, which is, you wouldn't want to. But I would put it down to a weird, boring one, which is structure. Our business was structured from the get-go very differently than a traditional agency. So the first thing, we only do SEO. We were very disciplined in what we said no to. We would, we're not doing your website, we're not doing your paid ads, we're not doing your social. We were very disciplined in what we said no to, which made our expertise very deep but very narrow. But that's what people wanted. And the second thing was how we structured is a normal agency has like a account manager and then an engineer behind the account manager. So you don't speak directly to the engineer. We got rid of that account management role. So we said, well, given that we only do one thing, why the hell wouldn't you be speaking to the engineer? So we linked people directly with that SEO engineer on the other end. And it turned out in a time where SEO was kind of seen as something like unmeasurable, like hard to kind of, quantify. Those two changes were just exactly what the industry wanted. So it just took off.
That's incredible because a lot of people have that fear where if you think of the quintessential engineer, someone you hide in the basement and shove pizzas under there and Coke comes out, right?
Yeah.
So, and I love that you have that operational efficiency to cut out that middle person and go direct. So it saves you money and it's better for the customer.
Yeah.
Was it challenging for the customers talking to some of those engineers and those engineers having to be client facing, or did it all just kind of work out?
At the start, it was very easy because I was an engineer that could also talk to people. And then I hired people that were engineers that could also talk to people. If you ask me that same question now, it's a very different answer. It is, I am constantly freaking unicorn hunting. I'm out there with a sniper rifle. No, not a sniper, a lasso. A lasso is a bit, I'm not trying to kill these unicorns. I'm trying to herd.
You got tranquilizers in there, mate, not bullets.
Exactly. So, exactly right. So, they're very hard to find, these people that can do both. So we have a full learning and development hub called Hawk Academy, which is where we train these people. We take basically the top 10% of students that go through that. We have a couple of thousand students that go through that a year. We take maybe, we take a few of those into a learning and development program that we put into Studio Hawk and we train these guys, but that takes a long time and is very expensive. And then we also ship people from London to Australia. So we literally, really, there's a lot of good engineers there that can also talk. So we move them over to Australia. But it's obviously a very involved process. And the salaries are quite high. And what they're able to do, given the valuable nature of it, one thing that we've also noticed that is very frustrating is we've become the guys to poach from. Everyone knows our guys are trained and that they're very good. And so they try and poach our guys, which is very frustrating. So holding on to these guys and giving them the career progression, the assurances is all a big part of what we do on a day-to-day basis to make sure that we're always the best offer.
And how do you think about talent now? Is it predominantly from Australia or Melbourne, or are you looking internationally now that it's quite easy to work remotely if you want that kind of really top tier talent?
Yeah, we kind of look at it like hubs. So controversial opinion, I'm not fully sold on the full remote. I like the hybrid kind of model. I like having hubs. So we have people coming in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then flexibility Monday, Friday. And, we have exchange programs with London, Australia, yada, yada, yada. But we need that collaboration. What we do is intrinsically we're sharing strategies, we're talking about different things, and you need to foster an environment of collaboration when you do that. Now, the example I always took when I was coming up with Studio Hawk's, policy around this was looking at game development companies, because I'm a nerdy game dev guy. And I looked at these game development companies and I looked at what was going on, and every game was getting shipped late. Look at Cyberpunk, look at all the games that came out during COVID. They were all messes. Everyone was delaying their games because we were all trying to collaborate through Zoom and through Discord and stuff, which is fine to a degree. But a lot of that creativity and knowledge sharing just doesn't come out the same way. I don't think there's a direct substitute for it. So I'm not saying it can't be done. Don't get me wrong. Don't be sitting there being like, wow, this guy's a arsehole, doesn't believe in remote working. Like, for us, we have a lot of those juniors paired with a lot of those seniors. We need that collaboration and sharing for that to be viable.
Yeah, it's I think in a very people-skilled business, like that's super important. I mean, we find that it's difficult, sometimes to really get that collaborative communication, and it can be also quite lonely if you're not like coming in.
For sure.
And doing client work. What's the biggest challenge that you face in your business? Like, is it people?
People, for sure. We're a people business. We've got about 80 people globally across London and Australia. So what that means is, we can't take on work unless we have people to do the work. And our standards of work are quite high. So we need to constantly have people in and developing them, which makes it very tricky. Yes, there's a lot of stuff we can automate and do and change, but at the end of the day, people want strategies, and you can't get ChatGPT to come up with a strategy for, a campaign like that, or analyzing data or reports in the way that a human can, or else everything would be AI run. Will it in the future? No, I think it'll be doing reporting. I don't think AI will ever have such a good grasp on strategy as a human would. There's just too many factors and variables. But so that's probably the biggest limitation at the moment, is like getting good people, training them and retaining them, which is always going to be a challenge for, I think, any people organization.
What about like in the business journey over the 7 years, what has been like the biggest hurdle you've had to go through, like either personally or in the company?
Probably the whole homelessness thing. I mean, there's definitely been road bumps along the way. People leaving to start competing agencies, or just not so much key people leaving, more just like those hurdles and those different things that happen. Given that I didn't have a background in business or an understanding of it, there's these valleys of death, we call them: 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50, 50 to 100. Well, not necessarily people, where businesses crumble because
revenue.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, I know people. Oh, sorry, you're right, people. These valleys of death, where if you don't change the structure of your organization, things fall apart very, very fast. And people that are stuck at 20 people for years, well, the reason why they're stuck there is because they've never figured out that valley of death. They've never figured out how to make that leap to that next level. So constantly reinventing the business is hard. And it means making really tough decisions. Because some of the people that you've been on the ride with, not all, I mean, we still got Lawrence and Anthony and they're absolute guns, but some of those people that have come on that journey, they're not the ones to take it to that next level. And that's an awful thing to do. I value loyalty a lot. And so I think that's you always want to make sure they're looked after and they've got the best opportunity, but sometimes that means not working with you. And that's probably one of the biggest realistic moral struggles I have.
That's a huge challenge as well. Like sometimes the 0 to 1 people aren't the 1 to N people.
Exactly.
And they don't want to be those people.
Exactly.
And you've got a decision to make. And I'd love to know, like, when you're going along that journey and you're reinventing the business and, you're restructuring, how'd you go about doing that? Did you bring experts in? Did you have co-founders? And I know you and Ben both go to EO. Were those the kind of things that helped you through that? Because these are huge challenges, and there's never really any one right path.
Yeah.
You kind of have to make your decisions.
Yeah, especially when it's a kind of a unique business that people haven't done before. You can't look to how other people have structured it. It's very frustrating. I don't have any co-founders, but I definitely, sit down with my GMs and a lot of org chart chats, which are actually some of our favorite. It's almost like it's like planning out a skill tree in a video game. It's like, where do these people need to fit? How are we going to progress people? What's our succession plan? All that stuff. But the biggest thing is, chatting to EO people, YPO people to see how they've done it and what experience shares they have. I mean, the value on being able to tap someone on the shoulder and be like, hey, mate, I noticed you've got this structure in your business. Why not? And for them in private and in confidence to be like, dude, don't do it like this. Like, these are the lessons I've learned. Or, everyone's always got a learning about their business. And I find that you don't have to look at people in the same industry. It's actually not relevant. People in the same industry as you, if I reach out to, key competitors globally, they're not going to give me the facts, right? They're going to give me a watered down version, or they might say, go do this, because they don't really want me to succeed. We're all friends, but we're not going to give key IP away to each other so freely. Whereas if I can go to Ben and I can understand his structure or anyone else's structure, they're going to be way more open about what works and what doesn't work with me, which is valuable, because then I can then take that and apply that to my business.
I'm not sure if you remember this, but the first time we had a proper conversation was 3 years ago. I met you at that cafe, which we saw you on Saturday, and sat down.
Where we meet?
That's where we met at
Where was it?
and then we went for coffee at the same cafe.
Where?
On Saturday, the one that I came across when we got your car. Were you having breakfast?
Oh yeah.
We went down and we went through your org chart.
Yeah,
I was having problems in my org chart, and I was like, Harry, can you help me? I run a crypto company, and Harry's an SEO agency, and I learned so much because we were talking about how do you, I don't have a GM. How do you bring someone to that role? We're talking about the problems and challenges you've had of hiring externally versus bringing someone up and the different departments, and walked away with like, holy shit, that was super valuable. And I think I really resonate with like, how the way you learn or tend to learn is just through talking to people that have done it before.
Yeah, I'm a total just a sponge. Sponge is a polite way. Ask hole's another way to put it. Like I literally will just it's about time I played that forward with you, because I will literally go to people and just be like, hey, dude, you've obviously grown this to 100 million. How have you done it? What are you learning?
Yeah,
walk me through your org chart.
Yeah,
like there's nothing more interesting to me than sitting down, P&L, cool. Like, money's money, who cares? But sitting down and going through an org chart, damn. And that's where, because from an org chart, you can tell the culture, you can tell, all these different things, like KPIs, you can tell all these different things and really get an understanding of an organization. Because one of the most important factors, if you look at, Harvard's research into successful companies, is structure. It's a boring, unsexy answer, but structure. There's structure, there's a talent of driven success and providing consistent customer excellence. They're the 3 biggest primary attributes, and you can go online and read the study, that are the factors in successful companies. So if you neglect structure or you think it's boring, I got bad news. That is going to be a key component for you understanding how you're going to structure this business.
And you can learn so much, whether it's hierarchical, how much middle management you have, and then what are reporting lines. But then also, that's great. But then how do you get work done? How do you assemble teams around work? Are they free to do it? What are the boundaries and how long will that take? I've just fallen in love with org charts again, mate.
Come on the journey with me.
Oh, it's fantastic. And mate, so you're about 7 or so years on. What is your role in the business now? what do you do? What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so I made a conscious decision about 6 months ago to step away from the director CEO role. Bluntly, because I had an ego check and realized I wasn't the best person to do that role. And I think that's very important. I think one thing I see a lot of, especially young business owners do, is they kill their business with their ego before anything else gets a chance.
How was that realization for you? So that moment there where you're the CEO, you're the director, and you have that kind of humbling moment where you realize you're not the guy.
Yeah, not amazing. It doesn't feel good to get rid of yourself. Yeah, it's just one of those realizations. It's like, I remember, I was in New York, I was at a YPO event, and I was chatting to one of the biggest private equity funds in the world, and we were in like their conference room, this very closed meeting. And one of the things he said that really resonated with me is like, when we grow companies, we say to the owner, you got two choices, red pill, blue pill kind of thing, right? You can either be rich or you can be king. What do you want to be? Because you can't be both. You can be king or you can be rich, but you cannot be both. And I thought about that. And look, get rich is probably a very crude way of putting it. But being king, I think, who cares? Honestly, who cares? It's exciting when you have your first employees to be the boss. When you grow and scale a company, you realize, well, any good leader realizes, I don't want to be the boss. All I do is like deal with other people's issues, and that's because that's what a good leader does. And I didn't have the attention to KPIs or performance management and the different disciplines that you need to be a great manager. I was a great leader, but not a great manager. And a CEO is a manager. A director is a manager. So I moved from that to what I call founder, which is just whatever nameless title I made up. Like, whereas I chair the board, so I work with the board to catch up with the executive team or the heads of, and steer the direction of the company. And then I also work on strategic projects. Jeez, that came out bad. Strategic projects where, so normally a chair is a very non-executive role. And I don't get involved in the day-to-day by any means, but I do consult with the general managers about strategy, and also I build different things. So let's say I see a massive gap in the market for this thing that we're not doing. I kind of hover around and I identify that, and I start building out a department to support that. Now, once I build the department, I hand that over, right? I'm not running that, I'm not doing that, but I'll hire the initial people and just work on special projects. They work out probably 60, 70% of the time, which is really good because those special projects are worth a lot of money and they grow the business to the next level. So I still love that, and I'm very passionate about the business. I'm not looking to exit the business. But for me, it's kind of building those special projects and making sure the company stays on that, pathway of helping the little guy, helping out people that haven't been given an opportunity. That's why we do so much work with the Lighthouse Foundation, all that kind of stuff. That's what I'm very big on, and that's what my role is today at Studio Hook.
That's awesome. I love that framing. Do you want to be a king or do you want to be rich?
Yeah, I always think about
or
that.
The money.
Another nugget for people listening is something that Graham told me early on about social media. I'm not massive on social media, but he always told me people post on social media for two reasons. Number one, for business, which is good. Number two, for ego, which is, up to you. Now, in my line of work, when you have a lot of people or a lot of employees, you don't want to be the flashy guy on a private jet posting photos of that. Doesn't make you look good. It's just ego. If that's what you do, maybe you sell, I don't know. Some people, that's their line of work. They need to present that inspirational front. For me, I don't. So the only things you see on my socials are more like business related things or updates or what's happening. But that was a little nugget that I always hold on to. It's like, remember, before you post something, are you posting this for business or are you posting this for ego?
Yeah. And a lot of it is like, it comes down to, you want to be rich and anonymous. You don't want to be that flashy guy, everything away.
Dude, I know some
you don't want to be that.
very successful people, and they're the most humble, down-to-earth guys. You can always tell who's fake rich because they're wearing like, all these designer clothes with all the brand labels and stuff. And you just know,
this is funded with debt.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you whereas you see these guys that are legitimate billionaires who rock up in jeans and a hoodie, some no brand hoodie. And that's when you're like, oh, this guy's legit. Like, this guy's got money.
He's not going to scam me.
Yeah, 100%.
It's fascinating where we spend our whole kind of careers or lives trying to get to that top level. And it's like trying to get into that room. And you get into that room, you realize there's another door and there's another room behind it. You get into that room. But then you're in the room and you're trying to get out of that room. Like when you're right at the top and you're running things the whole time. And after you made that decision and you had that ego check and you hired another CEO and you installed that CEO, what was that like for you? Because I think it must have been very challenging because your whole life and everything you've ever done would have suddenly changed.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. It really challenges your identity. Everyone says don't tie your success to your business, but I think that's, to be honest, I think it's stupid advice. Yeah, because it's like...
It's good in theory.
It's like, I don't know an analogy, but it's, dude, this is your baby. It's like having a kid and being like, hey, man, try not to be too happy, like, just because of your kid. Yeah, it's like you tell a parent that. You tell me how that goes for you.
Can I just add something before you answer this? I rang up Harry, this was probably in January, and I do remember this was just after you made the transition. I was like, dude, how you been? Like, what's going on? You're like, well, man, I don't really know what I'm doing.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. That's very accurate. Like, for the first couple months, I was like, well, I felt useless. Like, I was like, anything I touched, I almost felt like, this kid in a museum or something.
Yeah, don't touch that.
Like, oh, what is it? No, don't touch it. You're like, oh, shit. And then you touch this and then you'd break something and then someone would have to come and fix your mess and you're like, oh, shit. Like, what do I do? Like, what am I good for here? And so, yeah, that took a lot of learning. And to be honest, I'm only just learning that. Like, when I spoke about my role now, like, taking that chair of the board role, I was previously just a board member. I still own, 100% of that company, by the way. But I took that board role. I wasn't even chair of the board, but I've recently taken that chair role after doing, there's a course in Australia called the Australian Institute of Company Directors, about running and chairing a board. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So I graduated that, learned some more about that, and then took the chair role. Like, it's almost like you have to think, would I hire myself for this role? Before I did that course, dude, you got some 25-year-old founder that's got the company to a certain point. Is this a guy that you think is going to take the business to the next level? Or is he just a nice guy that you put in a nice seat and say, hey, man, thanks for helping out? But is he going to be the chair of the board? So that's where I had to go, okay, what would I need to have for me to hire myself?
Dude, that's some insane, like, self-awareness and self-reflection. Like, have you developed that on your own or through mentors and coaches and...
Probably mentors and stuff. Like I obsess around this idea of, like, people get older and they look at mistakes they've made in their life. And these people are amazing because they're willing to literally tell you, like, everything they've done wrong. Like, no bars hold. Like, we talk about failure in business. These guys will talk about how they've, like, just done, like, made horrific mistakes, or it's the kind of thing people that talk about, like, investment and compound interest and stuff. So you learn how people actually would do things if they had a go-over. And so that's what I try and take from. So I kind of learn, like, okay, young people often screw it up because they're too egotistical. They want things too fast. They don't understand that they're in a marathon, not a sprint. And so I take those learnings and go, okay, if I would apply that in my business, what would that mean? And I don't know, I try to keep myself humble given my background and beginnings. It's hard to, I guess it's kind of hard not to be humble in that regard. Like, it's hard to be too flashy and showboaty when you know that that's not me.
Yeah.
I'm the nerdy guy that wants to play some RuneScape or some video games on the weekend and do some fun projects and help people out. So I think that's what it comes down to, and knowing what your end goal is. Like, for me, this is getting a bit deep, but, like, we're all going to die, right? I might die tomorrow, might die in 50 years, who knows? But you got to remember what you want to be remembered for. No one really gives a shit if they go, oh, that was Harry Sanders, he was a billionaire. Cool, man. Like, there's a lot of billionaires, and also, who cares? What I'd prefer much more at my funeral is, that was Harry Sanders. He's the guy that gave me an opportunity that changed my life. That's... Because, I mean, if I'm at Graham's funeral, he's, in his early 80s now. Hopefully he's got another 80 years ahead of him. But if I'm at his funeral, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to be like, this is a guy that changed my life. And I think that is so much more powerful than, oh, wow, that guy had a lot of money and a nice house and a nice wife and a nice car. Because who cares, dude? Who cares? So that's kind of, again, getting deep, but that's kind of where it all comes from. It's like, well, how do I build, if that's my end goal, if that's where I'm going to end up, how do I work back from that? Okay, I want to create an organization that has opportunities for people, that does the right thing, that yada, yada, yada. And I don't need to be the richest person in the world or in the room. I just need to be the happiest. And, I won't name names, but I've met people that are, a very famous Australian success story worth billions of dollars. And, I was having dinner with him. And I always have to be so careful with names because I do this. I'll say, I'll try to keep this anonymous and I'll just say, oh, and then, his name's not, and then Marcus said, and then he says to me, and I'm like, dude, you've achieved so much. You're 70 years old. You got this, boat out in the Med, this massive boat. What do you want? And he's like, oh, I saw this Russian guy the other day. He had a boat twice the size of mine. My goal is over the next 5 years, I want to go from 3 billion to 5 billion. And I'm sitting there. I'm just like, that was the most uninspired, disinteresting thing I've ever heard in my life. This guy is literally he's playing this game as if it's a high score. You rack up the biggest score. And that can be fun. Don't get me wrong. We all sometimes look at that as a high score. But he's not happy. I know he's not happy. And it's because he fell into the most common trap that is, I want more. It's that guy's got a bigger yacht than me. Dude, there's always going to be someone. There's always going to be a bigger fish. There's always a bigger fish. So figure out what your end goal is.
Yeah, and it sounds like their goals are not their own. And it makes me think of comparison is the thief of joy. Where if you're always comparing to other people, you're never truly going to be happy.
I love that saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. And man, you were obsessed with SEO at the start, and that was your life, and you went deep and you built a company around it.
Yeah.
What are you focused on and obsessed with now? It sounds like it's in the impact space. So what are you focusing on, and what do you really want to achieve?
Yeah, well, I'm obsessed. The SEO stuff I'll always love. It's always my baby. I'm obsessed with business now. Business for good is something that is super interesting to me. I'll talk about theories on structure. I'll talk about theories on culture. I'll talk about all these different things till the cows come home, right? It's just so fascinating, this dynamic. It's almost like a psychology of business. But yeah, the impact side, obviously, as well. So I spend a lot of time working with the Lighthouse Foundation, which are a youth homelessness organization, working with their, my official role there is an ambassador, which means I do a lot of TV and radio when talking about the issue. I do a lot of conferences where I'll speak at an event and then donate that speaking fee to the charity. But also working with their team to kind of, make them lean, make them tough, strengthen that talent to be the best that it could possibly be, almost in a capacity coming into that business and helping them there as well. So I think I really enjoy doing that. I really enjoy coming into different things, especially something like youth homelessness, where you can make a difference and make an impact. So yeah, I would say my obsession now is around business and the impact that causes, whether it's as an ambassador for people or specifically Lighthouse Foundation, or whether it's coming in and just understanding and comparing notes on business. I just finished my second year at a MIT course in the States as well. And the more I learn about it, it's so exciting because it's one thing it has in common with SEO is the answer is always, it depends, right? There's no one right way to structure your business. There's no one right SEO strategy. It depends. And that gray area to me is what is so exciting, right? If Ben copied my business structure, if I copied his, it just wouldn't work. But the nuances and the differences are what is so cool to see. And you're changing real people's lives. You're creating real wealth, real opportunities, and hopefully a real legacy of a business that survives the test of time.
Isn't it fascinating how far businesses have come and what you can actually do with them? Because back in the day, it used to be, it'd be your family, you'd create money for the creators of the business, the owners. then it was for shareholder value, then it
Mm.
was stakeholder value, and now it's moving towards impact and having an impact in your community and other people's lives. And using the
Absolutely.
business as the vehicle for that.
Yeah, I think good business has always been around that. If you look at big businesses and what they do, a lot of their focus is on community impact. It's not just a marketing gimmick. They do it intentionally because it drives a culture internally for their business that strives to make them do better at what they actually do. So yeah, that's I mean, coming back to Lighthouse quickly, one thing we don't look at donations, right? Like when we work with corporates, we don't call it donations. We call them partnerships. And it's all about how do we, as Lighthouse, partner in with someone to deliver them value, right? Because we can't just knock on your door and ask for 20 grand, 100 grand and just be like, thanks so much for that. That was great. Dude, do you know how many charities there are? How many people are out there knocking on doors for money? Yeah, exactly. So you've got to find out how to make that partnership, whether you inspire their staff, create resilience in their team, tie your ethos into their mission. That's what a partnership is. So all that kind of stuff is about, coming back to your point of impact. It is. Business is about like, what impact are you having? I always say this, and again, it's a bit more controversial, but if you start a business to get rich, you're an idiot. And I'm not saying that, no one's ever started a business to get rich and wasn't successful, but people that start good businesses are there to solve a problem or to solve a need. Like if Studio Hawk had have originally started and just focused on chasing money, we would still be just me at this size. The second we started realizing, dude, we can make an impact in this SEO space, we can make an impact on people, is when we grew and kept growing. So yeah, if you're sitting there being like, man, I can't wait to be rich, I'm just going to start this business and the money's just going to flow in, rethink your priorities. Rethink, like, you can work for someone and make a consistent salary. Whereas if you have a business, I mean, I'm not even operationally that involved in the business, but on a Saturday, I'll get an email and I'll still have to do something. It might be a key decision, might be a TV show I need to appear on or something, but you are signing yourself up for indentured, I wouldn't say servitude, slavitude, where you are a slave to that business. Even if you're just on the board or whatever, like this is now your baby. It's like having a kid. Your kid calls you Friday night, you're on date night with your wife and your kid calls, need to pick up. Guess you're going to do pickup.
Yeah. I think
that's it.
The passion.
Having a kid is having a kid is great. It's parenting that sucks.
Yeah, 100%.
You see all the great stuff around businesses and people having money and appearing on shows and doing whatever.
Yeah.
That's at the end of like 10 or 20 years
For sure.
of being a slave to that business, working 24/7.
For sure. Like, it's so rewarding to see the kid grow up and, start walking and start running and do stuff. And man, there's no better feeling than when your kid brings something home, like, and goes, oh, look what I created. And you're like, wow, I had nothing to do with this and it created this amazing thing. But yeah, then there's the parenting side of it, which is not fun.
And it's relentless.
It's relentless.
There's no days off.
There's no days off. And yeah, even when you do look successful, like you could easily look at me and go, okay, we've made it. We're Forbes 30 under 30. We've got a $10 million business, yada, yada, yada. We've got all these different things. No, man, there's still like days you're just like, oh my God, like I'm going to be exhausted. Like I'm wrecked. I'm still having to deal with certain things. It just becomes different issues. I'm not dealing with client issues. I'm not dealing with necessarily staff issues so much. It's more industry issues. It's more, opportunities that you miss because you've got an opportunity cost doing something else. All these things still happen. So, you've got to be continuously growing and learning.
I think back to your point about the entrepreneurship and starting a business, like having that passion, like you were so obsessed with SEO. Like if you hated SEO,
we would have been
the first client issue. You would have been like,
dude, we would have been screwed, man. Yeah, 100%. We would have been like shit creek instantly. Yeah. Because that's the problem. You go, it's like if I started a business about something I didn't care about.
Like if I did SEO and you did crypto, mate.
Mate, you would have been a lot of problems. Like if we swap roles, there's going to be problems. So it is. It's exactly that. It's like passion, right? Like I like crypto. I'm not driven the same way you are about crypto.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't, I could talk about SEO and I can talk about business and you can hear the passion because I am passionate about it. I can talk about crypto and I can talk about it, but you're certainly not going to hear me and go like, yeah, that fucking, I'm going to listen to that guy. Like,
what would your tips be for like, you know, the people that are listening to the podcast that are starting their own business, maybe founders, maybe entrepreneurs looking to start their own thing? Like, what's the really key takeaway there for them?
Find something you're passionate about and that has a gap in the market. Like,
how do you find out there's a gap in the market?
I mean, that's literally $1 million question, man. Like, you have to make them do something. Finding a gap in the market can be simple. Like, there's currently a gap in the market in like this whole loneliness epidemic that's going on. Like, people feel more lonely than ever, even though they're more connected than ever. Yeah. What's the gap in the market there? Could you create an events business? Could you create like, you know, obviously escape rooms were a massive thing, but what's the next iteration of that? I've seen some cool ideas coming out of places like China and stuff. You know, one great thing I would do if I had time was I'd look at a business like that in China and totally copy it and bring it to Australia. And that would be pretty successful. Again, if you're passionate about that, if you couldn't care less about that business, don't do that business, because you're going to copy it in all the wrong ways and it's just going to suck. But, you know, that's what I'm talking about, gaps in the market, where you identify these different needs for things. You might have a need, or you might realize that everyone else has this need. It's better if you have the need. I'm sure it's something similar with when you started Collective Shift. You're like, dude, there's a massive gap in the market around non-biased information about this. So find something that you're passionate about. Find something that you're willing to sacrifice for. Like, imagine you just get a call from your best mate and he's like, hey mate, dude, we're going out Friday night. It's going to be amazing. There's going to be a bunch of girls, guys there. And now imagine you're saying no because you're working on this idea instead. That has made you $0. If you can't see yourself saying no to work on this idea that's made you $0 that you've already worked 80 hours this week on, that ain't it. That ain't the idea. Keep going till you got the one that you go, nah, mate, sorry, I'm working on this thing. I'm super interested in it. Like, you
have to be irrationally obsessed. And they're the things that are going to get you through those hard nights where you've done an all-nighter, you've got no money in the bank, you might have to fire someone, you have to keep going. Or even those nights where you're working super hard and you have to keep pushing for a client, and there's a payday at the end, but you're like, I've already got money, but I still have to keep going. Like, the passion is what drives you, because you want to see that change in the world.
For sure. There's not the scope to cover now, but Apple use this example. Apple has an education academy that they use for their top 500 leaders in Apple. And I'm just thinking about how much of this is public. There's a great story that they share that Harvard actually teach about the discovery of the South Pole and the Norwegians versus the British. And to keep a long story short, the British have got infinite resources to get to this island. They send dogs, ponies, snowmobiles before there were snowmobiles, like everything. They throw everything at this thing. The Norwegian guy, but they could only go there if they said that they would do science there as well. So they said they'll do science and they'll discover this place. The Norwegian guy lied to the Norwegian king, who sent him on an expedition to the North Pole, got to the point where he had to decide, and told the guys that he recruited, by the way, we're taking a quick detour to the South Pole. Did no science research there, just bought dogs, and they got there way before the English, who landed there first, and made it back where the English died, because they had this focus on balanced leadership and trying to hedge their bets across all these different things that they were doing. Norwegian guys like, dude, if these dogs don't make it, I ain't making it. So you can read the history about that. I'm not a big history guy, but that is so fascinating, that story around this idea of balanced leadership, which I'm not saying is bad by any way. Like, sometimes you want to hedge your bets, but if you're starting out and you're bringing ponies and dogs and snow machines and all these, like, they had 128 people versus Norwegians, 32, you have to go, okay, what's my dog? Like, what's the dog that's going to get me there and back?
And I think even you don't have the ponies or
one
dog.
For sure. So, that's how you can beat a lot of these big organizations, because they go and they say, hey, we're doing this new project. What are we going to do? Yeah. And Apple's very smart. There's a reason why they're one of the biggest companies, if not the biggest. I don't actually know the facts on that, but they are very focused on what they do. they know, hey, we're not going to bring the sled. We're not going to do all these things. Like, again, coming back, I don't want to make this the Apple podcast, but, before they had the iPhone, they created the iPad. And when Steve looked at it, he's like, dude, this is awesome, but this needs to be a phone, not a tablet. So they shelved the whole tablet. They didn't like work on it in the background. They shelved the whole thing and they picked their dogs. And that's how they went to market on that. So with your business, you've got to, I meet a lot of people that tell me they're working like 3 or 4 different ideas. And immediately I'm going to be rude, but I'm going to be honest. I discount them.
Yeah.
I immediately discount them unless they're at a stage in life where they can do that, or they're a non-exec in a few different roles, or they've founded companies before. Dude, you're bringing way too many things to the South Pole, dude. Where's your dogs? Yeah. Like, I need to see the guy that picked the dogs is the expert at picking the dogs, and he's the guy that's going to do it.
I think one of my favorite sayings is like, on that topic is like, are you playing to win or are you playing not to lose?
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
Because you're playing not to lose, you're playing the soft game. Like, you're half and half, like you're sort of in, but like if it doesn't work out, you're going to be okay.
That is a brilliant point. Like, what's the end goal? Like, also in this story, tying back to this pole exhibition, the British guy, there was a previous guy made it 200 miles, like, to the South Pole, but then had to come back. And this guy celebrated when he beat that 200-mile mark. Was like, that was a moment of celebration for him. But then you ask yourself, what was the objective? Was it to beat the last guy, or was it to get to the South Pole? Definitely. He just copied what the last guy did. The last guy bought everything too, and he didn't make it. He just copied that and did more of it, thinking that that's going to, I just need to beat this guy. But if you really want to pioneer something, you really want to do something, you're going to be the first one doing it, and you have to think of something crazy.
Yeah. Because you don't know the destination. That's the other thing about that story. Like, they didn't know where they were going.
Yeah, they didn't know the terrain, right? It was all new. So, and that's business. You don't know the terrain. You don't know if there's another COVID around the corner. You don't know what inflation rates are doing.
There's no rule book.
Yeah, there's no rule book. And if, there's no manual to it. So, and again, it comes down to it depends, right? It's like, oh, I'm just going to do everything that Harry said and you can follow all the advice. I was like, well, it depends. Like, it's frustrating, but exhilarating. Because there is no, like, that's why anyone's like get rich quick, all that kind of stuff. Like such a scam, dude. Such a scam.
$1,000 to like
the
business blueprint.
Yeah, exactly. The only course you should do is around a specific topic.
Yeah.
Like, hear from experts around a topic.
Yeah, and ask questions.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I could sit down with you one-on-one for a week telling you everything I know about business, and you could still fall over because, it just wasn't the right timing, wasn't the right whatever. So... It's tricky.
I love that story about the South Pole. It's just a few sentences, and already you're touching on things like where scarcity is your friend, strategy, resource management, stakeholder management. Do you have the right tooling for the job? And how larger businesses are more vulnerable when they're at the top. They can be knocked off by the smaller guy, which is exactly what happened in that instance.
Yeah.
Such a great story with so many lessons in it.
Exactly. And that was, again, you can look at history for these stories. I think we do discount history a lot, especially, I honestly always think history is pretty freaking boring. Like, but then you hear stories about this and you're like, wow, there are so many lessons in leadership and stuff. And that's not even a business, but it's the same principles as a business.
100%.
Yeah. That was one thing I liked the most when I studied business, was going through Harvard cases, and you have real life businesses that happened maybe 5-10 years ago, what they thought, how they set it up. You get a chance to solve it, and then you find out what actually happened and how you would solve it for to be successful.
Yeah, that's probably the best part. And there's a lot of case studies like that available online. Like, you just need to remember when you're reading them, you're not a great business person just because you've read a case study and be like, oh, they should have done this. It's like hindsight's 20/20, dude. Like, you weren't sitting there in the boardroom making these calls. Like, if you look at it and you read these case studies and you see what organizations do and which ones are successful, which ones aren't, there's so much publicly available information on it. But yeah, to your point, like, the case studies is the best way to learn. If you do a degree from a serious university like Harvard, or MIT, I remember Harvard, I'm doing a 3-week course with them in 2 years' time. And there's 42 case studies I need to read for that. Either it's a week or 3 weeks. And you need to know them. You need to highlight them back to front. And that's how you learn business in the real world, because you look at real case studies of what really happened. Not from what business leaders, and one of the lecturers said, if you like reading fiction, read people's biographies. They'll talk about the a million times that they were right and the one time that they were wrong that turned out to be the right thing to do anyway. Like, what you really want to read is independent case studies on companies. Like what really happened, what bad call did Harry really make, and how did that either work for the company or not work for the company.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually one of the courses I want to do, the God course. It's bloody expensive to do, but you learn so much in such a short period of time.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, mate, to wrap things up here, because it's
Yeah.
been really good, we have to talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah,
I think
talk to me about Bitcoin.
I think you own some.
I do own some Bitcoin. I do own some Bitcoin.
Okay.
My GM actually bought some Bitcoin.
Okay.
He's a big fan of, he owns some gold as well.
Yeah.
In an undisclosed location, I don't know. And he owns some Bitcoin. And he, to be honest, when he first bought it, I was like, this is years back, by the way. This is when Bitcoin was quite new. And I was wondering, like, what is this, man? Like, what are you buying? And he's like, no. I was talking about crypto, and I'm like, I don't know, man. He bought this Bitcoin, and I was talking to him like, what about these other coins? He's like, no. He's like, no, you don't want any of these. Bitcoin. He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
And so he bought this Bitcoin. And I got to say, for someone that was against the decision, he did pretty damn well off it. Like, he's held it for a long time.
Yeah.
But he's got that Bitcoin safe and it's appreciated quite a lot.
Yeah.
So it's on the P&L there somewhere.
Okay. How do you think about your investing, like in general, personally or business-wise, like cash flow that you're making?
Yeah. So investing in Australia, it's a little bit different. Like we have a lot of money in property. Like I own a couple properties. One that I bought for mum to help her, and one that I bought for me, which you know all about. And that's been a project. Anyway, the other vehicles I have a lot of liquidity.
Yep.
And I think it's important to have liquidity because sometimes businesses need capital. And dude, the most expensive thing you can sell is equity. So if you're there, you need a loan or you need cash or something, you have to give up equity to support the business. I mean, that would suck because I know the business will be worth 3 times as much in 5 years and I've given up equity now. So I also put money in index funds, very safe, very conservative. Yes, you can laugh at me. The 25-year-old that has the 25-year-old index fund guy that's getting 10%. Yeah, 7%. And then I've got some more money in private loans for like business tied against property. So the biggest risky investment I have is my business. And yes, you do need to think about your business as a risky investment. I effectively have property, very safe, private loans, and share ETFs, which are quite safe, both of those categories, and a business, which is incredibly risky. And then we've got Bitcoin. Like, would I buy? Yeah, I probably would buy more Bitcoin. Like, I talked to you about these different cycles, and I'm not even gonna. I'm talking way off my area of expertise here, man. I'm way out now. But learning about those cycles and stuff, like, and getting involved in that process, absolutely. The only other crypto that I've ever bought was a coin called. This is a bit of a meme story. I bought a coin called UltraSafe. Just the stupidest purchase ever. I went on Reddit, which is where all good stories start on Reddit, guys. And I went
Best financial advice on Reddit, mate.
Yeah, that's it. And this is just after, what was that, Moon Coin or something?
Yeah, it's Safe Moon
or something. That's how that happened. And everyone was like, oh my God, dude. Like, that's when it went up, not when it crashed, sorry.
Okay.
And when it went up, and I was like, dude, this crypto stuff, man, maybe I'm wrong. Like, because I'm living life and I'm thinking there's no such thing as easy money.
Yeah.
There's no such thing.
You're saying like...
And I'm seeing these people just put money in, and I'm like, I knew it was gambling, but I was like, well, it's better odds than I get at a casino. So this next coin came around, UltraSafe. I'm like, yeah, sounds good. I think I put $1,000 in or something. Yeah. And dude, this thing took off. All of a sudden I had $5,000 in that account, right? And I'm just like, my God, I've been doing this whole money making thing completely wrong. Like, what am I doing? I'm busting ass. I'm trying to do all these different structures and stuff. And the next day that coin was worth $1. But you bet I went around the office being like, guys, I have this crypto thing figured out. I haven't figured out. All right.
Go on for you, Ben.
Yeah, Ben, mate, I'll give you some advice for crypto, mate. Anyway, so I lost $1,000. I think I put like another $1,000 in the next day and it all went to zero. I think I hold it somewhere still. I don't know where. But if you look at the coin gecko of that or whatever it is these days, like, it's grim. It's not coming back up. It's not coming back up. But if anyone wants to buy 1 billion ultra safe coins off me, more details are there. But yeah, no, I do think there's definitely merit to crypto. Like, just because I'm not heavily involved in it doesn't mean I don't see the merit to it. I don't have the time. And again, pick those battles. I see it as a great asset class that's probably underutilized. It has got a long way to go. But unfortunately with crypto, you really need to understand what you're doing. You need to understand what it is. You need to understand where it's going, what you're doing with it, how to hold it, all these different things. Whereas an ETF fund, you just put money in. So I'm sensible enough, I think, to go, okay, I don't know enough about this to play with this. When I have some more time, I'll do some more digging in that space.
It's a right frame of mind, I think. Berg's going to love you for your investment strategy.
Oh, mate, good on you. It's so sensible. Love it. And it's good because you can automate it. You don't have to think about it, and you can focus on the things that matter to you.
For sure. And it's a safe, diverse portfolio. Probably when I do look at crypto, I'll probably look at putting 5% in is the general rule of thumb. I've heard from I'm not talking like you put $5 in if you're worth $100 or something, but like if you've got a big portfolio, like 5% seems to be a good rule. The only tricky part I've heard with the 5% rule is oftentimes you put 5% in, you wait a year, and that now asset class is worth 20% of your portfolio because crypto's gone up so much. So it's like, do you keep that as 20% of your portfolio and risk the dip of crypto, or what do you do? And so that's where I think that strategy is more risky. And also just the whole, not so much volatility of crypto, but holding on to it and making sure. I mean, we've all seen these, people get hacked, and you got to be smart about it. And I know, something about like hardware wallets and stuff, but I don't trust myself enough. Ben knows me, mate. I'll be like, Ben, mate, I've done it.
Cool, yeah.
I'm up, and then I'm like, dude, how do I recover my key? Be the same day.
I've got 3 words left. I've lost the other 9.
Yeah. Is it enough? I've got 3.
Exactly. You, man. You'd be like, yeah, bro, I just lost 9 words. That can be a problem.
Ben, do you know a guy? That'll be exactly what happens, and that's why I like, when the time comes, for sure.
Even like one day, I think for you, even sticking your money in like in a crypto fund could be like an option.
I know I'm never going to be the guy picking after ultra safe, mate. It's like picking individual stocks. It's like
time
totally, unless you know and you've got advice and you really are aware. Like, I mean, that's what you need to do.
The answer depends.
It depends. Yeah, but certainly if you're like me and you go off what Reddit says, my God, don't do that.
Doesn't depend. It's just
the logic I see. Like, oh my God, the logic. It just makes me look at my investment and be like, I looked at this logic and I was like, yeah, this checks out. Like, none of this logic made any sense. There was no investment deck. There was no understanding of any of the basic principles. It was just like, oh, this guy's like, this guy looks cool and they've got a CTO. So this coin's going to work.
Got a few followers.
Yeah, he's got a few followers. How could this go wrong?
A website and a Discord legit.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, I like the way that you've talked about your investing as well, where a lot of people, they'll spend a lot of time making money and then managing it, and it requires more management. And you put all this time into your company or your work or whatever you've done, you grow your investments, but then you become a slave to them. And it sounds like you've got a lot of heavy automation. You don't have to think too much, and it's just there working for you rather than heavily active things that you need to think about, like, what specific crypto you're in, or whether it's VC investments or other companies.
Yeah, like pick your battles. Like, look at the opportunity cost. Dude, you just can't feasibly be across what's happening in crypto, what's happening with individual stock prices, what's happening with individual private loans that's going on.
And then SEO.
And then the SEO business. It's like, which one of these are going to make me the most money? Am I now a crypto guy? Am I now a, understanding the stock market guy? What am I? It's like, no. The one thing I know, I play and I pretend at all those things, but the one thing I know is business and SEO. So that opportunity cost makes sense to go, I'm going to focus on that where I know I've made money and created great impact and grown a business rather than play in ETFs where like I've made a little bit of money, but certainly nowhere near like what I have in the business. And I certainly haven't created any impact with my ETF investment. So I'd have to figure out, even if I was amazing at ETFs, how do I then create impact from this? So
Back to your goals.
yeah, back to my goals, right? So for me, it's kind of makes sense. It's like run these things on, autopilot, though you're still checking in with these things. Like what does Graham always say? It's like fingers on, hands off, which is like, you don't want to be involved. You don't want to be muddling with it, but just keep a temperature check because, all that kind of stuff, the advice you get, it's not their money at the end of the day.
Mate, that's been sensational. But did you have anything else?
Oh, yeah, mate. I want to know, mate, you're a gamer. What games are you getting into? You've had a hard day. You head home. You crank. Are you PC, console? What are you? And what games do you play, mate?
PC guy. Depends on the day. Like if I've had a pretty cruisy day, we're firing up a bit of Dota 2. I don't want to hear it for any League players. Don't even add me. Don't even tell me to play League. I'm not interested. What I've been playing lately, a bit of Rocket League, which is a bit more low stress. I've been doing the media circuit at the moment with it's like Homeless Awareness Week at the moment. So I've been doing like a lot of TV and radio. So I come home and play some Rocket League. But mostly and Baldur's Gate 3 just came out as well. So it's a pretty like nerdy RPG, single player. You come home, you just play that. But usually pretty like uninvolved games, like outside of RuneScape. I mean, RuneScape is that game I've been playing for like, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years. It's the most, I don't even know RuneScape. It's got the worst graphics, the best game ever made.
Oh, man, it's so good. I'm an Apex Legends guy.
Oh, yeah.
All the time, first-person shooter. And I also play Demio in VR with the guys from work, which is like a tabletop dungeon crawl.
Oh, yeah. No, I've got a couple of those headsets. I get the Vive and the other one.
I'm not a big gamer. Actually, I'm not a gamer.
Oh,
dude, you should play some games.
Yeah, mate, get into it.
You'd be better if you played games.
Such a shit bloke.
Yeah, just get good, mate.
Try, yeah.
It's fantastic. And, mate, I'd like to go back to the Lighthouse Foundation. So we touched on it a few times. You're involved with those, with the Lighthouse Foundation as an ambassador. Did you want to tell us maybe a couple of their programs and things that they're trying to do and achieve? And also, anyone that's listening, how they could potentially get involved and help out.
Yeah, for sure. So the problem is we've got about, every day in Victoria alone, in Australia, we've got about 22 homeless kids.
New homeless kids.
Yeah. This is a big problem. Like this isn't like, I'm not talking one or two people a night. Like these are people sitting at a train station wondering what the hell they're going to do tonight. It's severe. So we need foster carers to look after these kids. We need carers, social workers, and we need donations, right? Because the government only supports about half of the organization. The rest is privately funded because the government, they don't care about the youth homelessness as much as they should, is bluntly what I'll say. So the biggest way to get involved is, just kind of sharing the support. We're trying to push like our marketing a bit more because people don't know about it, which means that, while people don't know about it, it also means that kids don't know about us. So they don't get the support that they need. And the biggest thing, like just if you're out and about, maybe not even in Australia, and you see someone that's homeless, don't look away in disgust. Don't look at it like a disease or something. Like being homeless is a phase that a lot of people go through, unfortunately. It's very shameful to a lot of people. I don't mean that it is shameful. I mean, I was homeless, but there's a lot of shame associated with it. So even just saying, hey, how are you? Giving them a smile. I remember just my time on the streets when people would instantly look away from you was when you felt most dirty, like you were a burden or just a burden on everything. And so I would say, listen to this, go away and just give them a smile, say hi, but don't just turn away in disgust.
That's tough, man. You don't really think about it. Like you just kind of walk past people on the street and you don't think about how you can affect them and what they're actually going through and how many people there actually are.
Yeah.
That's really eye-opening, man. And anyone listening, get amongst it and get involved.
Yeah. Awesome.
We'll leave the links below. Man, that's been amazing. Where can people follow your stuff? Maybe drop your your business details, your newsletter.
Yes.
I do read from time to time.
Oh, good. You're on my newsletter.
Tea time.
That's good.
Tea time with Harry.
Tea time. Yeah, we've got a LinkedIn newsletter about more about SEO stuff.
Yeah.
My LinkedIn's where you want to go, or my Instagram is where you want to go to learn more about business stuff. To be honest, I don't talk about that much about business concepts, but I do talk about what's happening in the business, updates on things. But yeah, if you need to reach me, they're your best bets.
I didn't even know you were on Instagram. I didn't
Yeah.
know at all.
Yeah, I'm not massive on it, but I've got it, and we post updates on different things that are TVs or different stuff like that.
Is this where you came up with Coffee with Ben? You stole Tea Time with Harry? Is that where you nicked it from, mate?
Yeah,
that'd be right.
I saw Harry
That'd be right.
crushing it. I'm like, as he spoke at the start, when you want to win, you just copy. So
Yeah.
I copied and changed it to coffee.
Yeah,
tea, 'cause I
that's
don't like
genius,
tea.
dude. I'm pretty sure I stole Tea Time from someone. It's not at least the most unique concept.
Your cordial updates.
Cordial updates. I was like, yeah, tea sounds
Great
cool.
cordial update.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
really gonna be bourbon or coffee for me. I thought maybe bourbon.
That's it. Good artist copy, great artist steal.
Dude, that's been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy. You're on Media Week. Also, search Harry Sanders on Google because you're on that project last week.
Oh, it was, yes. Yeah.
Congrats on that, man. That
Thank
must be
you.
pretty.
Yeah, and I'm doing, I gotta remember what I'm doing tonight. 7 News. I'm doing something with 7 News tonight. I'm doing the news. Yeah, I'm doing, you know what? I'm doing something tonight. Stay tuned. I'll pretend it's a secret project.
You sound so much like Ben. I'm like, what are you doing? Where are you going? He's like, something, can't remember their name, but I'm going
It's in the calendar.
No, thank you so much, man. That's been fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We hope you got something out of that. That's Harry Sanders, founder of Studio Hawk. If you're needing SEO or just want to check out the Lighthouse Foundation, we'll keep the links in the description below. We'd also love for you to share this with a friend if you've got anyone that you think would find value in this, any part of it. Sharing this helps us grow the podcast. We're growing numbers, Bergs. We're increasing month over month. That's
Compounding, mate. I'd love to see the results. It's great.
Oh, love to see a compound.
Love compound growth. But no, thanks everyone for tuning in. And as always, we'll see you next time. Thank you, Bergs.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, champions. And thank you, Harry.
Thanks, guys.